Today I'll be showing you how to replace wheel bearings on the Polaris Ranger. This is the 700 model, but the 700 is going to be the same as the 800, 900, and 1000, as well as the 500 and the older 600s. So what we're going to do is take 4 lug nuts off. Those are going to be a 17 millimeter, and these are tapered nuts here. You can see that, so you want to make sure that they go on in a crisscross pattern when you're going back together. And we can go ahead and pull that wheel off. Underneath there, you're going to see your caliper here. There's a hydraulic line that runs to your calipers. And we've got a cotter pin that runs through this nut here. I like to take a pair of side dikes, and I just take and grab onto that, just kind of pull it down, pull it out of there. And we've got your cotter pin out there. We replace those going back together. And I'm going to grab a socket here to pull this nut off. This is a 1 1/16" socket. Go ahead and pull that off, and there should be 2 washers in behind here. So we'll pull those, and those will come out as we pull this hub off of here. Next thing you're going to do is pull this caliper off. Those are 15 millimeter bolts. And then as long as you don't touch your brake pedal, you can just pull that caliper off of there. If you touch your brake pedal, what that's going to do is push these pads together, and you could potentially push these pistons out and cause damage putting them back together. So just keep your foot off the brake pedal until you get this put back on your disc there. All right, now we can actually pull this hub off now. Some of these are a challenge. All right, what I'm going to do, because it appears that this hub is stuck on there, and we've put some WD-40 through there, and then we've used a rubber mallet, tapped on the axle. It's not being held on by the axle. It's actually kind of seized into those bearings there. These bearings aren't terrible, but they do need replaced. So we're going to go ahead and continue on, just leaving this hub hooked up there. We'll pull this all off together. If it was stuck on the axle part of it, obviously we're not going to be able to pull it out like we're going to, but since it's stuck on the actual knuckle itself, this piece here kind of welded to those bearings, we'll be able to pull that entire assembly off, get it on the bench, and then we'll be able to pound it out the other way. So we've got a cotter pin on the back of this back side here where you can't see it. It is holding this tie rod bolt on. We've got 17 millimeter bolts, and I think it's a 15 millimeter or a 17 millimeter nut and a 15 millimeter bolt running through there. We've got a washer underneath here, so make sure you keep track of that. And then we actually have a washer underneath of the tie rod, and I'll be able to show you that when we're going back together, but we want to make sure we keep those in that order. Now to pull this knuckle off, we've got bolts on the top and the bottom, and we'll go ahead and take those out. Now you do have to pull these. All right, then we might have to kind of push this knuckle up and down to get these out, or you can take a rubber mallet if you can get in behind there. Pull these out. That one came out pretty easily. Now I'm going to tap that out of there. Do the same with this one. That one's out. Now you could potentially pull this out of the differential there. That's not what we want to do. Okay, now we've got the entire knuckle off as well as the hub. And now I'm just going to take it, I'm actually going to tap on the back side of there, knocking this hub out of here just to get it out of the way. So I'll show you that process. All right, now I'm going to use that tool, try to tap that out. All right, we have gotten most of the bearing off. I want to show you what I did here. That bearing ended up just pulling out of here, or that hub ended up just pulling this race off of the bearing, stayed on the hub. Now what I did then was pulled that disc off so I didn't bend it. I could put it in the vise. So I pulled these T40 Torx off of here. There's just 4 of them, and I'll make sure to lock those going back together, Loctite them. But I have that disc off of there because I don't want to bend up that disc. I'm going to put this straight in the vise. What this allowed me to do then is get a punch in here, or a chisel, and wearing safety glasses, steel toe boots, as you can see I'm still wearing, put the chisel in there and just tap. I like to use a chisel that's got a good blade on there, a good end, to get in between the hub and the race. Now, what happened then was I ended up tapping this down a couple times to get that race scooted out from the actual side of the hub then, and now I'm just able to take and pry it off. What actually happened was that bearing just ended up breaking, and now it's really just loosened up and allowed me to pull it off fairly easily. So I wanted to show you that, just kind of a trick if that bearing doesn't come off of there like it should. You can always get the chisel out and do some prying. So now we've got the bearing off. Here is one of the seals here. We've got the bearing off. Now at this point we can start tearing into this, the actual hub, the bearing that we're going to replace, or the knuckle here. And I'm going to put it in the vise again. It's so handy to have a vise around just to hold it. Otherwise you're trying to hold onto things and pry and do everything. So grab your snap ring pliers here. You've got a large snap ring. Make sure you have your snap ring pliers. These are adjustable to do either direction. So you're going to be squeezing in, and you almost have to go the entire direction. Again, wearing safety glasses. That's why you want to wear safety glasses. All right, now we can go on the other side. I like to put this in the vise then. Again, wearing steel toe boots. Take your chisel, and you can use a bearing plate just like this here, but the problem is a lot of times you end up tapping just the center because you can't get around to the outside, and then you end up leaving that race inside there, and then it just is a challenge to get out. So all right, bearings out here. There is the bearing after we've completely destroyed it, what was left of it. And I'm going to flip this over. Now what I'm going to do is take a little emery cloth here and do a little cleanup on these walls here, and then we can go ahead and put the bearing back in. We've got the bearing in the freezer, which will actually kind of help shrink that material there. At least it'll help. I'm going to take it, I'm going to clean this up really good. Any sort of pitting that we got into maybe with the chisel will make that bearing hard to install. All right, we've got that cleaned up really well. All right, we're using the Polaris bearing here. Let me know if you need these bearings. I can get these, but like I said, these were in the freezer. This was in the freezer. Cools it down to a place that it's will slide in easier. And put a little bit of assembly, a little bit of oil on there to kind of loosen things up a little bit more. Then I take and grab a bearing installer here. This one's actually, as you can tell, a little bit too big. My problem is my next size down is a little bit too small, and I like to make sure that I'm touching on all surfaces here. And you can start installing. You want to make sure you hit as straight as possible. Kind of look around to see if you're straight. Looks like I need to tap a little more on this side, so I'll take and move my driver over just a touch. You want to go until it can't go any farther. Then I like to grab the next size down. And it's unfortunate it's not a little bit bigger. It would be best if it touched that entire race there on the outside, but this is all we have right now. And go down until you can see that entire area where your clip is going to sit there. Then make sure this is all cleaned out from any kind of debris, so our clips sits down there properly. And then take your snap ring here, and again, wearing safety glasses. There we go, it's in there. Okay, we got that slid on there. Make sure they turn properly. There's no reason why they shouldn't. And we're gonna go back together with it now. Well, first we're going to throw the hub in the vise and put that disc on quick. Gonna grab just some blue Loctite here and our 4 screws. Dab a little bit on there. Make sure you put your disc on in the correct direction. There's tapered sides to your disc, so you just want to make sure that those are going on correctly. Okay, now we can slip these on here. Again, just like your lugs, these are gonna center themselves with the taper, so don't tighten them all up until they're all snug. All right, they're all snug. We're gonna go back together with everything. We're gonna slide this bottom knuckle on. Your caliper mounts are gonna be in the front here because of our tie rod mount being back here. You just slip that on as far as it'll go, and then put that in position there. These have to go on there fairly straight. Because of how we press it in that that vise there, you might have actually pinched these together, which isn't bad. Just takes a little bit more effort to go back together there. And then you can look down through there and see where that needs to go. Sometimes it'll slide up and down like that. And same way with the bottom there. And take and tap on the bottom. Okay, we got our 13mm nuts to go back on here. And going back together here, we're gonna have the tie rod, and in between the tie rod and the knuckle, there's gonna be a washer. Slip the bolt through there, and then the washer underneath with the 17mm nut. And then we've got our cotter pin that'll run right through that bolt there. And our caliper, I've done a different video on how to replace your pads, so check that video out on my channel. Now our hub then, we're just gonna be able to slide right on. You can, if you want, put some assembly lube on here. Sometimes it'll help it slide together better. Sometimes that'll help when you're taking it apart the next time a bearing goes out. Got 2 washers on there, and then your nut there. It's a castle nut, so it's got the grooves in there for another cotter pin. Then spin that on there. Then stop when you get to a point where you can slide a cotter pin in. I like to bend both sides, that way if one side's happen to break off at some point, you still have something holding that in. Caliper slide on there. And then we've got our 15mm bolts that'll mount that caliper. All right, now we'll throw our wheel back on. Thanks for watching. If you have questions or comments, make sure and leave those below. If you've got more videos you want me to do on this machine, let me know. I'm constantly working on these Polaris ATVs, and there's plenty of videos I can make on those. So if you have questions or comments, don't forget to let me know what those are. If this video has been helpful, please subscribe. And again, putting this wheel back on, make sure that your lugs are tightened down to center themselves, and then go ahead and snug them up.